deadline, and it's like, okay, you got to fix this now, and you just spend the time doing that.
Yeah, there's a lot of tricks. Professionally, there's a lot of tricks in making it look like you spend a lot of time on things without actually doing that. You know, there's the art of illusion in every stage.
Aside from the Q-tip example in Star Wars, can you tell us another one?
Okay, well, first of all, I'll tell you the Q-tip thing. For those of you who weren't at my panel yesterday, in the movie Star Wars Phantom Menace, there's the pod race arena, and in the arena seats, we had over 1 million people in that audience, and they all needed to move around. They didn't want to do it in computer graphics. That would have been extremely expensive. So the solution that someone came up with was to put screen down on the bleachers, just at a diagonal, and feed Q-tips in. Not the brand Q-tips, but they're actually cotton-tipped applicators with sticks. For the ones that you'd see at a medical office for doing swabs. So they actually had a crew of 4 people at a table dipping them in different color paints for the clothing that people wear on Mos Espa. And they fed them into these screens. And then the plan was to blow them with fans so they would move around a little bit underneath. And that was how the audience was going to be made out of these Q-tips. And that's what's in the movie. When you see the movie, and all those audience people are actually Q-tips. So, and we didn't actually have to put fans on them because we were shooting motion control, which meant we shot very slow frames, a slow frame rate, which meant the air outside and the temperature fluctuation was enough to get these things to move around and look like people. So there's those happy accidents that you run into when you're doing visual effects. Other stories, like there's a lot of them. The waterfalls in V were actually salt poured over velvet. And some other powders. You know, we have a saying that off the shelf is always cheaper. So we try to buy as many things as we can off the shelf so we don't have to make them from scratch. And then we put all our energy and our creativity into those things that really matter, the things that are created specifically for the movie you can't buy. Right? In Mission Impossible 3, the helicopter is actually piloted by 2 George Bush action figures. Because the mission accomplished George Bush action figure had a really great flight suit and helmet.
So we have a very patient gentleman in the back that we'll get to, and then we'll jump over here.
Sure. First of all, I want to pay a couple of great compliments. The films and the effort that you put into the detail of your work really makes the films all together just incredible. But apart from that detail and the effort you put into that, how do you manage some of the timelines? How do you manage actually accomplishing the film within the timeline that they want them to be accomplished within? You're managing each of the wrinkles down to what happened in T2, or is it just based on the scene? You need this for this scene, and you just go until you finish.
Oh, that's an easy one. The time always disappears, and you're scrambling at the last minute to try and get everything done. You know, we had I was on Jurassic Park for 2.5 years, and you know, we still came right down to the wire. You know, the night. As a matter of, and no, we passed the wire. As a matter of fact, when we got the T-Rex to the stage of Warner Brothers. And we thought we were done. And then they said, you know, Steven came over and he said, okay, so you guys ready to have this thing be rained on? And we're dealing with a 35-foot sponge. So our eyes were just bugged open. Yeah, we could do yeah, it's all ready, Steven. So he leaves, and it's like, we got to coat this thing with silicone. So, you know, we got silicone. We stayed up for 24 hours, and we're up there slathering silicone over the finished painted T-Rex, trying to seal the skin, inevitably failing because it still is a sponge. And it, you know, we ended up. So the solution was we would film the T-Rex. It was never supposed to be rained on. It was going to be rained around, and then they were going to CG the rain on the T-Rex and make it look like it was being rained on. And they decided, I think probably for the best, that wasn't a good idea. But we suffered in that, you know, okay, now we have to make this thing waterproof, which was impossible. So the solution was to, when the T-Rex started moving like this, back and forth and going, and you could hear the mechanics chattering, we'd have to cut and power it down and start squeezing water out. You know? We started wearing raincoats after the first day because you're doing this and it's just going all over. So, and then we had a crew that would stay all night long. It was just their job to dry out the wrecks. You know, we had a big zipper in the belly and we'd open them up and they'd put blowers in there and dry them out and squeeze them. They'd be squeezing them all night long. You know, so we could get maybe an hour, 2 hours worth of filming the next day before we had to squeeze them out again. So yeah, it's just crazy. Time disappears because you tend to focus and spend all your time and effort in, you know, creating the piece and you know, you kind of move with the schedule. But time just disappears and you're always stuck, you know, sooner or later.
It is the biggest challenge. It's what makes what we do work and not play.
Yeah.
The budgets and the schedules. We always say if you remove those things, we'd just be playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell people, they say, what's it like to work on a movie set? And my stock answer is, it's endless hours of boredom, punctuated by seconds of sheer terror. That's all it is, because we, you know, inevitably, we take our effects to set, okay, and it's like, you know, whatever it is, Chucky or the Crypt Keeper, whatever, and because it's a puppet, it can wait, all right? The actors get shot first, all right, because they're real and they're temperamental and they'll start complaining. So we get them done, and they shoot all day long, and we still have to be there at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, but we may not shoot our stuff till 8:30 at night, okay? So you sit around all day and you're doing this, and you're looking for stuff to do, and if there's not more work that we brought with us, you hit craft service and you end up putting on 15 pounds on the film. But, 15-ish. But yeah, we would shoot late, and then you're sitting around and you're lethargic, and then suddenly the AD comes in. You guys are up in 10 minutes, and you got to scramble and get everything ready and run at the set and just hope and pray that everything's still working the way it did when you left the shop yesterday. So.
They call it being on standby.
Yeah.
When you're on standby. The first time that I was on a show that had a lot of standby time, I kept going, should I go home? I don't understand. Someone had to explain it to me. But yeah,
that's some good books.
There's also the idea that you never actually finish any of the stuff you're working on. Never to your own standards as an artist, So it's like they say about paintings, it's never finished, it's abandoned, and that's pretty much the way our work is. They literally have to pry it out of our hands before it goes on camera many, many times.
Already your standards are very high.
Yeah. Luckily, for the camera though, the camera doesn't need to see what the naked eye needs to see, so it's pretty forgiving. Even with digital, it's surprising. The CCD doesn't capture everything that the naked eye does still. So, it makes things look better than they are in person, which is great for us.
So how does the 4K, how's that going to change that?
So far, it hasn't been too bad. I mean, not from the practical side, because we're not to brag, but we're good at just making things look the way they're supposed to look. And it hasn't been really difficult for us. For CG, it's been a bigger rendering pipeline to build, but outside of that, it's been business as usual. We were actually really scared of it when we started Attack of the Clones. It was the first movie we shot all digital. And my model, the one that I supervised, was the first one up. It was Padme's apartment. And we were terrified because we didn't have any more money or time, so we just built it the way we normally build the stuff. And then we shot it, and it looked better than what we had in front of us. And a lot of us didn't understand why, but then we found out that the CCD just doesn't, it averages the color and the light, so it makes it look actually much sharper and more crisp. We used to hide things in film grain, but now we actually hide it in pixels. So it's pretty awesome.
So we had a question over there in the brown coat, and then I know we had some questions over here.
So as digital technology has gotten cheaper, how do you guys draw the line between doing like physical practical effects and doing it digitally? Like how has that cost changed, and how has that changed over the past
Rock, paper, scissors, usually.
No.
So basically, it's just with digital effects getting cheaper, balance that with other effects. More or less, right?
Yeah, or how do we decide go digital and practical with. There's a lot of discussion about that. Every time we do a project, we get the smartest people you can with the most experience you can get, and you debate about it. We talk about it, and you weigh out what's going to cost more, what's going to kill people, what's, you think about all the variables. Oh, it's actually really complicated. The planning for a movie is so critical if you don't do it right, because there's already all the unpredictable things that happen. So you just try to minimize that as much as you can in the planning. So, and there's a lot of different opinions as to whether it's more beneficial to go with CG or practical. And sometimes it's just decided based on the experience of the people who make those decisions. So it's pretty random actually, but there is always a lot of discussion about it.
I've only worked on a couple of projects where we had a lot of CG, like T2 and Jurassic Park. After I moved to Sedona, I was contacted by IMAX to do some dinosaurs for their T-Rex back to the Cretaceous. And they had an impossible schedule. They needed 7 dinosaurs of various sizes, and busts and full dinosaurs and big ones and small ones. And there was no time to do it, but I knew they were doing it, they were going to be done digitally. So it was kind of, CG was kind of a blessing for me at that point, where I suggested just doing half dinosaurs. All I had to do was sculpt 1/2 of them, so I didn't have to worry about symmetry, which just takes so much time in sculpture. So it was a breeze doing half the dinosaurs. I molded them, cast them up, sent them to LA, where they scanned them and the computer created the other half and put it together. And then they mapped texture over them and saved me the time from doing all the texture and everything. I just needed the form. It was a thing of beauty. It's like, wow, this is great. But yeah, it's for me, CG is the interface has worked out well.
Yeah, there's a lot of powerful tools in both sides, so it's a good argument for either in many cases. Yeah, sorry. I had another thought, but.
Okay, so as a questions in that, I believe all the way over to my left-hand side. I think you were first.
How much information, when you start a job, how much of the specifications do you get in advance and how much comes in as you go along? I was thinking of the T-Rex sponge idea. Seems like a lot of, who's responsible for that communication and how does that happen?
Oh,
it seems like it'd be a pretty important thing to say, oh yeah, they're building a T-Rex. By the way, in the script, it's in the rain, so you might want to make it waterproof.
Yeah.
How does that communication happen, or in this case not happen?
It was just a change of mind, from God to Stephen to us. Like I said, it was never supposed to rain on the Rex. We were all like, Stan, this is a big, piece of rubber. It's not going to rain on it. No, don't worry about that. It's never going to rain directly on the T-Rex. That would be stupid. But they just decided, Stephen and probably the other guys decided that it wasn't really practical to make CG raindrops fall on the T-Rex, and then you'd have to map them dripping down and dripping off and everything. It really would have been kind of a nightmare. So that's how that decision came about. It was just like, it's not raining. It's not going to rain on the T-Rex. It's raining on the T-Rex. So.
Did you spend a lot of your time adapting to different things as it comes along?
Oh yeah, you have to have a big truck with a lot of tools because you never know what they're going to ask for. So you just, okay, I'm ready. Throw anything at me. And you wear your hockey mask and you don't go home with too many injuries. But.
Yeah, they try really, really hard to plan these things carefully. There's a whole hierarchy of production, producers, and there's on the creative side and the money side, and then you got people that coordinators that work for them, and PAs that work for them, and all the various supervisors in the different departments, and they have a lot of meetings, and they do break down every single shot and every single scene in the movie as much as they can. Usually in a 6 to 9 month period on an average motion picture, like a bigger motion picture. Lower budget, it's more like a day or two. But it does vary quite a bit. But you just try to plan as carefully as you can, and then you just know that things are gonna change.
You know Murphy's gonna come visiting. Is that a knock at the door? Is that Murphy?
If you see him, tell him we're looking for him. We've got a conversation we wanna have with him.
Down in the front here?
When you make the hybrid animations with the CGI and the physical effects, how do you structure it so the animation matches up with the physical effects? I've tried doing stop motion After Effects and it doesn't work 99% of the time.
Yeah, it's tricky. Boy, that's a big question. You know, most of that happens at the compositing side. Is that what you're thinking about? How to match a live action element with a CG element?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of different tools that we'll use for that. We use tracking markers, which are these little checkered symbols that we'll actually put on the set, and the software will track those things for you. Sometimes we'll build computer models of the environments, and then do the animation in a computer version of the environment that matches perfectly the physical environment. When we were from Attack of the Clones forward, that was a big movie for innovation for us. Before that movie, we used to get the animatics on VHS tape in the model department because they thought we didn't use computers. So, and of course we did, extensively. We did a lot of the design work on our own. So we would laser cut things, CNC, all that kind of stuff. So what we started doing on that movie was we would actually trade our data with the art department. So they would actually give us the Maya file, we break down what the sizes and locations of everything are. We build our physical models to match that, you know, providing plans to all our fabricators, you know, from those computer files. And then those computer files would go to CG, or vice versa, they would build something and give us their files. And that's how everything would match in the environment. Now the animations, they usually would just do the animation in a virtual version of our environment. If it was a motion control move, we would take the motion from the animatic and use that in the computer controlled cameras. You probably don't have that, but tracking markers then become the next thing. But tracking is just very time consuming. You know, it's a lot of planning, it's a lot of measuring and math and things that no one likes to do. Kids are always disappointed to hear we do math. I really think we just play with toys. But yeah, it's just a lot of planning and just really thinking about how